Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Behold podcast on the Genre Equality channel. I'm Hitzer,
Isa.
and before we begin our episode this week, we would like to talk to you a little bit about Asian Nightmares, which is our
Yeah.
first horror audio fiction drama
hmm
that we are so proud to host by created by our friend Christopher Falk. Tell us a
Yep.
bit more about Asian Nightmares, Isa.
Yeah. So Asian Nightmares is something that we've been working on with Chris. And Chris, as you remember, he's been on every Halloween episode we've had in the last couple of years, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah.
So if that gives you an inkling to kind of his inclinations for what kind of genre stuff he's really into,
Mm-hmm.
that should be it. But yeah, we've been working on that for a while. You know, Chris came up with the idea maybe about a year and a half, 2 years ago, inspired by stuff like Welcome to Night Vale and No Sleep Podcast, and he just really wanted
Mm,
to kind of like start and write his own Asian inspired horror podcast. So
indeed.
he kind of got working on that. So Water Corridor, the first episode is now out.
Mm-hmm.
You can find it on Spotify, as well as all the other streaming services. You can always go to anchor.fm/Asian Nightmares if you want to see all the available streaming services that you can get those from, whether it's
Yeah.
Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, if you're interested and you're somebody who likes to keep these digital copies, you can download the episode. It's free, but you can pay what you want if you want to support what Chris is doing at Asian Nightmares at
Yeah.
the genreequalitychannel.bandcamp.com.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I know it's a very long name, but unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
genre equality has been taken by somebody in Czechoslovakia.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting. And if you like what you hear, you can check out Chris's Patreon at patreon.com/Asian Nightmares. Everything
Mm-hmm.
that he's done so far, this is a passion project. Everything he's done is out of pocket. He's been writing an entire season worth of materials, and we'll be continuing to release in conjunction with Asian Nightmares over the course of the next couple of months. Yeah, so it's a full season and all that. If you want to support him um with his hustle and you enjoy horror podcasts, then please go
Yeah.
check that out. So all the links will be made available in the description below
Mm-hmm.
on YouTube and on our Mixcloud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you can find our links on our Facebook homepage as well.
hmm
I've posted all of them there. The Water Corridor is the first episode. It stars again our friend Lian Sutton, also who's the main voice actor, who delivers a stirring, evocative, creepy monologue that will surely get you to look for water stains in your house. Um, Fantastic episode, and like I'm totally unbiased here because I had no involvement in the production of the episode, unlike my co-host Isa and Chris, of course. So yeah, just an objective opinion here. I thought it was great, and as Isa mentioned, find it on Bandcamp, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast.
hmm
It's there. Additionally, big news coming up. You already know that we are available on YouTube. You
Yep.
already know that we are available on Mixcloud. We are back on all the other streaming platforms:
Yeah, finally.
Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, um, wherever that you listen to your podcast, you can now find Genre Equality as well. So
hmm
if you find YouTube or Mixcloud to be too inconvenient or it's not your platform of choice, everyone
Yeah.
has a different preference.
hmm
Go ahead to any platform, type in Genre Equality, and you can find all our episodes there. I've taken the time to backdate everything, so you can
Yeah.
find everything from episode 1 to current day, everywhere on any platform that you so choose, and we're excited about that.
hmm
With that being said, all the promos and everything out of the way, give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a follow,
hmm
especially on YouTube because it helps the algorithm there,
Oh yeah.
definitely. This week's episode, we're going to be delving into the world of FX dramedies, which
hmm
I feel like FX is a network, with the specific subgenre of dramedies, is akin to how HBO revolutionized the TV drama with shows like The Sopranos and Deadwood and The Wire.
Yeah.
I feel like the FX dramedies, the half-hour dramedy revolution, has been led primarily by this network. And he has produced several genius level shows
Hmm.
that are easy to consume because they're all half hour. They are neither dramas nor comedies. It's hard to pinpoint, hence the term dramedies. And in the sheer sake of convenience for me, I've always tried to go through my favorite shows, one at a time, maybe one every few months.
Yeah.
In this particular episode, three of my top five shows of all time are in here, and it's a bit of a cheat, but I figured, why not? They're all FX, they're all really good.
Yeah.
We'll be talking, of course, about almost the granddaddy of them all, which is Atlanta. Without Atlanta is the Sopranos of the dramedy genre. Without Atlanta, there would be, no Fleabag, no
Hmm.
Barry,
Hmm.
no nothing else. No I May Destroy You. Everything stems from Atlanta. Additionally, we'll also be talking about Pamela Adlon's dramedy about mothers and daughters,
Hmm.
which is loosely autobiographical. It is called Better Things. Additionally, we'll talk about Zach Galifianakis's wow, that's a mouthful. Zach Galifianakis's show about a very sad clown who failed out of clown college and has to return home to Bakersfield to become a rodeo clown.
Hmm.
And finally, we'll be talking about the latest addition to the sterling lineup. It's called Dave, and it's about the life and times of Lil Dicky, the white neurotic Jewish rapper. And while its first season doesn't quite come to the heights of the other three shows that we're talking about,
Hmm.
I believe that towards the end of the first season, and especially right now in its second season, it is firmly entrenched right up there.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that in a little bit lah. Let's begin first with Donald Glover's and Hiro Murai, who also co-created the show,
Hmm.
Atlanta, which is honestly one of the best shows of all time. It is one of the smartest shows in television. I know it's an unoriginal sentiment,
Yeah.
for the entirety of its first season, which emerged in 2016. It had the marvel and depth of an art house indie film.
Hmm.
And it was regarded as such, but it doesn't make my love for it any less genuine or true, depending on how you color it. The view does present its creator star Donald Glover as as a genius storyteller.
Hmm.
And we already know, he's a great musician as well. He's won Emmy awards for this, including outstanding lead actor for a comedy series.
Yeah.
Atlanta is one of the most surreal, magical shows out there that continually surprises me with his uh, artistic ambition,
Hmm.
its camera work and trickery, and its boldness in storytelling. It seems ridiculous that such a show is as underrated as it is, and I don't mean underrated in the sense that it has bad reviews. I mean underrated in the sense that it's not entirely too popular. It's not
Yeah.
like at a Game of Thrones, like, or Rick and Morty sort of like zeitgeist level thing. Although it should be. Um, Sadly, like we haven't had a season of Atlanta for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
But the good news is Donald Glover is now filming season 3 and 4. And in fact, they're actually close to wrapping up season 3 and 4 shooting at the same time. So there
Hmm.
will be more Atlanta coming up soon. But in the meantime, let's talk about the first two seasons of Atlanta, which begins with the story of an Ivy League dropout named played by Childish Gambino, aka Donald Glover, who is trying to manage his cousin's rap music career. But it breaks conventions right and left. It veers into surreal asides, abrupt violence, and subplots in ways that no one can expect from a half-hour dramedy.
Yeah.
Its second season, especially, I think, is a step up, even from the first season. It's a work of genius. I've long raved about Atlanta, but like I only recently caught up with it, so I think it's better to get your fresher thoughts on this. Having seen the first two seasons of Atlanta, what do you think of it?
Oh man. Okay. So in my memory, at least, like recent memory,
Hmm.
uh, I don't think that we've gotten much magical realism stuff,
Yep.
on like serialized TV anyway.
Hmm.
And so like watching Atlanta, and of course you and Hadi have been going on and on about Atlanta since season one.
Yep.
So I did manage to check that out. Not too long after season one came out, but I never really caught up with season two, and I'm like, oh
Hmm.
goodness. I've really, really enjoyed it. Like it is everything people hype it up to be, right? Like sometimes, you know, when shows like get a lot of hype, especially when you've got a big name like Donald Glover
Yeah.
attached to it, right? Donald
Yeah.
Glover of Childish Gambino fame, as well as Troy from the Community,
Mm-hmm.
like that carries a lot of weight, and sometimes it gets hyped up, you know, to the point whereby like it's a little difficult to accept the thing for what it is. But
Yeah.
I'm very, very glad that I caught up with everything. I mean, like there are just these incredible moments in every episode that stand out at you, either because of their absurdity, either because it's magical in some sort of way, it's emotionally heartfelt, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but or it displays a kind of universal kind of like realism as to the struggle of every day, right? And
Yeah.
like these things combined make for a very, very um it's a very compulsive watch. It's hard to kind of tear away, just because like I think after the first couple of episodes you get very invested in what
Mm.
each individual character goes through, and you just
Yeah.
want to see what kind of nonsense they get up to and what kind of nonsense gets up to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like I decided in the end to rewatch the whole of season one
Mm-hmm.
going into season two, just to make sure that, you know, I got a good handle on like what happened before and all of that. And I think like
Yeah.
it's very easy to, because of how short it is lengthwise, right? Like it's a good 20, no, it's a
Yeah.
good like 10 episodes ish per season, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not too long. But it's kind of easy to forget like the breezy sort of things as we go along. And it's kind of important because there's a lot of throwbacks, right? Like there are inside jokes that you might miss if you're not paying attention to some of the
Mm.
earlier episodes as well. And there are a lot of all sorts of callbacks and things like that. Yeah, so if you're the kind of person that would likes this, you know, like the detail orientedness of the storytelling and how it always is self-referential in that way, I think that Atlanta will definitely be on the list of things that you want to check out.
Oh yeah, yeah. Going back to season one, right? You already had kind of a hint as to the absurdity and the magical realism or
Yeah.
surrealism that happens. And there were episodes that broke format, like BAN, ban. It was a one-off episode.
Hmm.
In season one, episode 7. It
Yeah.
follows Ern's cousin Paperboy as he takes a guest spot on a
Oh
late
my
night talk
god.
show.
Yeah.
He is a panelist for both the discussion on race, which proves to be increasingly tedious for Paperboy,
Mhm.
and it's also both funny and poignant. And honestly, one of the best episodes of that year, and that kind of inventiveness extends to season two. In season one, you already had like kind of glimpses of like ridiculous things like invisible cars and stuff like that. Which is one of my favorite episodes as well, which is the club episode. But then in season two, you go into episodes like Teddy Perkins in episode
Yeah.
6,
Yeah.
which doesn't even, I mean, it doesn't feature the character of Ed, but Donald Glover features prominently as Teddy Perkins.
Hmm.
And you see Darius, played by Lakeith Stanfield, heading into a strange man's house to buy a piano. The man, who's played by Donald Glover, kind of resembles the late Michael Jackson. He has like this
Mm.
bleached skin, soft-spoken voice, and this indescribably eerie feel. It is an exceptional episode of the show and a sublime short film, honestly, that can be watched on its own.
Yeah.
Because it is creepy, it's horrifying. Also, it's very funny,
Hmm.
and it gives this almost very elegant treatise on the relationship between genius and abuse, or genius and pain,
Hmm.
and whether it is worth it to tap into that. And it's brilliant. There's an episode about a barbershop, which is a bit more realistic.
Yeah.
It's a season 2, episode 5. It basically follows Paperboy as he's just trying to get a haircut, but his barber is just too distracted to make it happen, and it's just like this escalating comedy of frustration
Yeah.
that makes me very. It made me very upset, just watching it, but in the best way possible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What were your favorite episodes of Atlanta as you were
I mean,
rewatching it? Yeah.
I think the club is going to be a perennial favorite, just because of Invisible Car, Ben as well because of Antoine Smalls,
Hmm.
who I think is the most ridiculous character.
Oh
Uh,
God, yeah.
yeah, but I mean, like, given kind of recent news and a lot of transracial people stepping up and
Yep.
announcing themselves, very, very kind of ahead of its time,
Hmm.
and absolutely ridiculously funny to watch within the context of the talk show itself. I liked Barbershop for sure. Teddy Perkins is so surreal. Like it could exist on an entirely different show, and you wouldn't notice it. Like it could be. I wouldn't say Black Mirror, but something of that ilk.
Yeah.
Teddy Perkins would definitely fill a spot in there. I thought
Mm.
the one about Drake's house was pretty
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
Um, One of my favorite episodes though, and something that kind of like took an emotional turn that I wasn't quite prepared for was Fubu, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Season 1,
Fubu.
right?
Yeah, Fubu is no season 2, episode 10.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
beloved episode.
It's the finale. Yeah, it's Ern's turn towards darkness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I really like. I didn't expect that at all, right? Like you get a flashback episode every once in a while. Like everybody seems to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think I've seen like it's such an interesting character study of a young Earn,
Mm-hmm.
and how you can kind of extrapolate his experience and trauma there, all the way into all the shenanigans that happen afterwards, and like I think
Mm.
that's incredibly smart. And it really really kind of like caught me off guard.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so just some of my favorite episodes, but I mean, like some of them are definitely more memorable than others. But like again, everything kind of has its own kind of standout moments, that remain in the mind.
Yeah, Atlanta has this knack for giving you what you didn't know that you wanted. It
Yeah.
always, it doesn't quite follow a serialized story, which helps it evoke surprise or delight or puzzlement or horror or anxiety or elation in any given episode.
Hmm.
Whatever it gives you is different, yet always equal or better than to everything else. Whatever you wanted or expected. And by this point, I should at least have known better than to expect anything in particular. So Atlanta is best approached with a blank state of mind
Yeah.
with every episode. And but the thing is, right, the series actually season to season has added like a sort of thematic through line through its season. For
Hmm.
example, season 2 was subtitled Robin season, and it kicked off with a robbery of a chicken joint. That became this almost like close quarters, scary slash funny gunfight. Something out
Yeah.
of a '90s indie flick. And verbally explained to us that these episodes were set up during the run up to the holidays when robberies were exponentially increasing.
Hmm.
But as the weeks passed, it became clear that this was, a kind of rope a dope explanation. The Robin meant more to Atlanta than a felony crime, and evoked more than just the threat of violence. The
Hmm.
season was about all the different ways in which people can feel robbed or be robbed, of dignity, of money, of autonomy, of safety, and so on. And I think like because of Atlanta, actors like Brian Tyree Henry and Lakeith Stanfield, both have gone on to kind of mainstream superstardom because of
Yeah.
the show. It's kind of launched them in a great career trajectory. And I mean, Donald Glover was already kind of a big deal before this, so I can't quite say this about them.
Hmm.
But they all feature like very internalized yet emotionally accessible performances.
Yep.
Lakeith Stanfield, at times can be a bit of a cipher, but I think in the Teddy Perkins episode, you sort of get through to him because he's not slick, he's not disaffected.
Yeah.
He's scared like in that moment. But at the same time, it's kind of fun to watch him that. And I haven't even talked about Donald Glover's performance as Teddy Perkins, which was so surprising. I didn't even know it was him until I read all the articles afterwards.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
remember reading a lot of news about that where people were just going on and on about it, and I had absolutely no idea what they were saying.
Yeah, yeah, it plays with robbery in so many like benevolent and playful ways, and it also, like as I said, robs us about expectations of what a TV series, specifically a TV series about African American rappers or
Hmm.
African American Salvinists, working class and poor young people, and all those descriptors in combinations. It does subvert expectations by lingering on moments, basking at them, at
Yeah.
times, stretching them out into kind of like gossamer strands in the manner of an atmospheric art house indie or international art film. It segues from farce to tragedy and back again. A privilege, I think, kind of more afforded to series and movies with like predominantly white casts lah. I mean, I've
Hmm.
seen this sort of thing done in things like Mad Men and for that sort. But Atlanta, because of its subject matter, it was kind of a chimera of a show until you actually got into the feel of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of built as a comedy, but a lot of the time it's more comfortable with not being funny at all, or with being alarming or horrifying. And other times it's not funny, haha. but like funny strange,
Mm.
and portions of it like borders on the experimental. It does so much to take away of our preconceived notion, specifically mine, of how an ongoing TV series should use its core cast. Like usually when you're watching a TV show, you know who the stars are, and you're therefore supposed to pay attention to them, lah. You know who you're supposed to care about.
Yeah.
But with Ern and Van and Darius and Alfred and all of them, you never quite know who's going to be the star of the episode, and there are some episodes where they don't show up at all.
Yeah.
And I think it sort of builds like this world that is so believable, but still a little off kilter, a bit like Donald Glover has described this as like a rap Twin Peaks, which I sort of kind of get. I sort of kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not nearly as weird as Twin Peaks, but it
No.
gets there sometimes.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, all in all, like this is why like Atlanta is in one of my top 5 shows of all time, and it still is. Which is why when I talked about earlier episodes, like when I talked about I May Destroy You or
Hmm.
Barry or Fleabag, I was always hesitant to put them at like the top of the dramedy list because Atlanta was always there.
Yeah.
And it's been a few years since I've seen Atlanta, but then like the impact is still there. But the recency bias, sometimes when I watch the latest season of Barry or watch the latest season of I May Destroy You or whatever, I was like, okay, maybe this is the best show. But then I keep thinking back to Atlanta and I haven't seen the end of it. And Atlanta is always at the top for me. Like even like unmemorable, quote unquote unmemorable episodes like Alligator Man or Woods, which like Alfred, he goes through a trip through the wilderness,
Yeah.
that kind of doubles as an interior journey into dream logic and symbols. It's all like they're all very different and they're all so creative.
Mhm.
That's why I think I put like Atlanta at the top of it. Maybe not for you, but it has to be near the top of the dramedy list for you as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easily. I don't think I've consumed enough dramedies over time to kind of like definitively put it at the top, but it definitely ranks up there as one of the first things I'm going to recommend if people talk about that. Again,
Hmm.
like as far as magic realism goes, I think this is definitely the best for sure.
Yeah.
And like and in that way, it stands out greatly from all the other three topics that we were talking about today.
Oh yeah, definitely. It has a bit more in common with Dave, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
Especially in season 2 more so than season 1 now. But like I mean the hip hop theme, and the artistry of deconstructing what a rapper is.
Yeah.
Uh, same but different lah, because Dave is more white. But we'll get into that lah. But
Yeah,
I
for sure.
just have to say that Atlanta is a very elegant show. And it almost feels sometimes like both a collection of a short stories, a short story collection. I mean,
Mm.
and it's very like it's very artistic in that way, and it's driven by such talented filmmakers like Donald Glover
Yeah.
and Hiro Murai. If you don't know who Hiro Murai is, he's actually directed and or created a lot of the dramedies that we've talked about. He's the driving force on Barry as well.
Hmm.
He's a driving force on a lot of shows. And Hiro Murai is a great director. He also directed This Is America, Childish Gambino's music video. So he's very good. And if you want to know where Lakeith Stanfield suddenly popped up from,
This.
where Zazie Beats came up
Yeah.
from, where Brian Tyree Henry came up from. This was the show that kind of discovered them all and like launched them into the stratosphere. And
Mhm.
the result is a series that I feel that is still growing and evolving before our eyes, and I can't wait for season 3 and 4. Yeah, I mean, any final thoughts before we move on about Atlanta?
Yeah, just shout out to Zazie Beats as Van as well. I don't think we've talked about her enough.
Hmm.
The one where she visits her German heritage. I think it's Helen.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah,
god,
yeah, yeah.
like it's so funny. But yeah, like it's a outstanding cast, right? Like I mean, outside of Donald Glover, again, all of them were fresh faces when this began. Now they're everywhere, all over the place. Of course, Lakeith Stanfield, I think, being the standout of the lot, with
Hmm.
the multiple projects that we have covered that he has been in over the course of the last like 2-3 years. It's kind of
Yes,
crazy. So like
yeah.
watch Atlanta because it's really good, and I mean it's good for a reason, and it's launched a lot of very amazing talent and put them into other equally amazing projects as well.
By the way, I do have to shout out Atlanta because Atlanta was the show
Uh-huh.
that convinced me to watch BoJack Horseman.
Really?
Yeah, because there was a scene in season 1
Uh-huh.
when walking through the mall, and then the characters are talking to each other about BoJack Horseman. Tracy says to Ern, this was the quote.
Oh
Don't get me wrong, it's a funny show, but the way
yeah,
they dive into depression, especially after what he did to her daughter, I was
yeah.
like, can you even feel bad for this horse anymore?
Yeah,
And I was
yeah.
like, yeah, okay, if Donald Glover loves this show, I will watch BoJack Horseman too. So yeah,
Hey,
two
shut
for the
up.
price of one. Two of the best shows of all time. I
Mm-hmm.
got because of Atlanta. So yeah, that's great.
Nice.
Yeah, game recognized game lah, shows. And we've talked about like I think BoJack Horseman like so
Multiple
many genre
times.
equality it multiple times. You know how
Yeah,
much we love that show as well.
yeah.
And
Still
yeah,
one of
it's still one of our favorites, and it's easy to say that Atlanta belongs right up in that stratosphere. Yeah,
yep, for sure.
yeah, yeah. Atlanta, one of the best shows of all time, in my opinion, right up there. Next up, let's talk about Pamela Adlon's show, Better Things, which
Mm.
also coincidentally began in 2016. And Better Things, in my eyes, has slowly become one of the finest dramedies on television. But it has always been, unlike some of the other shows here, kind of resolutely unflashy
Yeah.
in its brilliance, partly because its subject matter is so contained and domestic, and because in a typical episode, not very much appears to be happening at all.
Hmm.
Pamela Adlon, who writes, directs, and stars, has fashioned a gorgeous and loosely autobiographical story about this raspy-voiced single mother Sam,
Yeah.
who is a jobbing actor and her three daughters living in Los Angeles. It touches on elements that are at once familiar, like aging, mortality, how women and men relate to one another,
Hmm.
and gives them all new dimensions. I think primarily the show is about how women relate to each other, specifically mothers and daughters,
Yep.
with Sam and her daughters and Sam and her own mother. The show created by Adlon, I think, is one of those first shows that introduced me into the whole like naturalistic kind of style of storytelling,
Hmm.
which in 2016 I wasn't like quite a big fan of, and Better Things uh, belongs to me like a special place in my heart because it allowed me to have to learn the patience
Yeah.
of watching a show like this, because the rewards oftentimes far exceed short-term gains of like other shows which have shocking episodes or
Hmm.
exciting and stuff like that. I
Hmm.
feel like the emotional rewards of Better Things kind of outweigh everything else, because it feels so worth it. Like you feel like you get to live in this world with these characters, you feel like you get to know them, you see the messiness of it, the almost frustrations at the near unlikability of most of these characters, but the depth of humanity that each of them possess once you get to know them lah. And
Yeah.
the sheer exhaustion of raising children, the frustration and exhaustion and the constant grappling with kids.
Yeah.
It makes me have a newfound appreciation for mothers everywhere. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've only seen season one of Better Things so far.
Yep.
But like up till season one, what do you think of it?
Oh, I actually really love it. And I agree with a lot of things you say. In terms of like its approach, its tone, its tempo, in which like everything is just kind of laid out. I
Mm-hmm.
think like it hits a very interesting emotional spot for me because having grown up in a single parent family,
Mm.
I am neither a mother nor a daughter.
Right,
um,
right, right.
but there are moments in time that are portrayed, at least from the quarter of the franchise that I've seen so far,
Mm-hmm.
that really hit kind of close to home, right? Like as a teenage boy growing up in a single parent family with multiple children involved, right?
Yeah.
Myself and my two brothers. So I mean, certainly the dynamic is very different, and it's surprising in that way to learn these kind of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously mothers and sons and mothers and daughters, that are different dynamics in play there as well. But like so often, right, sometimes like little things would just kind of get me off guard, like the little arguments in the car, just kind of like struggling to keep things together, the things that as kids seem so huge and large and important to us, from a mother's perspective, right, it seems so different. And I think like I get reminded of that so often. Obviously as I've grown, right, I've come to understand the parents' position. Yeah, even as I see, my brothers and my friends have their own kids, and it's a vastly different experience from what I remember growing up. And
Mm-hmm.
Better Things captures that perfectly in so many respects.
Yeah.
you know. And it's very easy because like there's it's not high stakes in many ways,
Mm.
and because it's not high stakes and because you're allowed to see the everyday kind of like the slice of life of this particular family and the struggles that they go through, it's very you're quick to be invested, right?
Mm.
Because you are not interested in the characters so much so as a kind of like a plot to heighten the conflict and like progress the story or anything of the sort. They are
Yep.
there as they are, and that in and of itself is both problematic and a cause of conflict, and the
Mhm.
resolution of those conflicts are very very well emotionally balanced and have great payoff, you know.
Yeah.
So I am yeah, I've been this was the one that I've been binging most recently. I'm a bit sad I didn't plan my time as well enough to like get through as much of it as I wanted to, but like I'm definitely going to be watching this much further into season 2 to 4.
Yeah, this might surprise you, but like in my opinion, season three of Better Things and season four of Better Things are the two strongest seasons of any of the shows that we're talking
Oh wow.
this week, and that includes Atlanta. Like I think that highly of season three and four, and it's really what it's really a great experience, and I think Sam Fox, specifically Pamela Adlon's character here, stands tall as one of the most authentic television characters I've ever seen,
Yeah.
and Adlon has created this vehicle around her that is unlike anything you'll see out there, particularly for comedies. You know, the writing on the show is probably the best thing about it. It is so
Uh-huh.
smart in that the characters don't all sound like they come from the same writing team,
Yeah.
as as it would happen on most mediocre sitcoms. Sometimes I watch, I mean, a lot of the sitcoms I love, like your Brooklyn Nine-Nines
Hmm.
and Kim's Convenience and all of that, but the way the characters speak, like every single one of them sound like they're from the same writing team, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that Pamela Adlon understands that like every one of her daughters, both fictional and non-fictional, well, she based her fictional daughters on her non-fictional daughters,
Yeah.
should all sound like different independent people who don't come from the same mouthpiece. Like they all have like
Hmm.
different opinions, they all have different depths, different fears, different privileges, and things like that. And she goes about to present them as truthfully as possible,
Uh-huh.
and thereby kind of allowing us to see our own lives reflected in them, despite the fact that perhaps we don't grow up as like kind of selfish slash privileged girls in rich LA, but like you can kind of see the patterns of adolescence in them,
Hmm.
just because it's so honest and it's so messy. I feel bad for Sam sometimes, I feel bad for the kids sometimes, I feel bad for Sam's mom sometimes, who is honestly like, in terms of comedy, Sam's mom is like the shining beacon of comedy on the show.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like half-hour TV direction, the thing that Adlon does here week in and week out is astonishingly attentive, empathetic, and when it wants to be hilarious, it rejects the whole sitcom premise that like you need to gain as many laughs as possible per minute.
Yeah.
So the show is very loose, but it's never scattershot. And Adlon's directing and writing confidence is evident in how the camera navigates around the Fox home, the Fox family, as well as how the entire series plays to the strengths of its various actors.
Hmm.
Um, the whole created, directed by, and starring thing has been done quite a bit, and Adlon is one of them. Is up there with Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Donald Glover and all that. And Bill Hader. Adlon as an actress is outstanding. Adlon as a writer and director is even better.
Yeah.
This story about raising like three very eccentric, steel-willed, girls. Uh, boasts some Stone Cold classic episodes, especially towards the later parts of the season.
Yeah.
And the more the more that you get to know them, the
Hmm.
more that you will feel like these aren't characters so much as just you are fly on the wall watching things happen.
Yeah.
It is endlessly rewatchable. It's very rewarding. Um, the more you watch the show, the more you will love it. And which is why this is one of my top five shows of all time.
Hmm.
Season three and season four is some of the best television I've ever seen, and it's done so in such an unflashy way. I think that's the thing I love most about Better Things is so it doesn't call attention to itself as
Yeah.
much as some of the other shows here, but it's just a nice little funny, empathetic, and a little. naturalistic, experimental at all at once.
Hmm.
It's fantastic. It's so much of his themes, from womanhood to aging, is very relatable to me, despite not being a woman and not being too old. It calls to mind something like Lady Bird, where like I
Yeah.
am, where I've never like been in that life, but I feel it at the same time. It's the universality in the specificity
Yep.
that I feel like is so that's what makes it such a gem. Very inspired filmmaking and TV making, I should say, in this particular show. Any final thoughts about Better Things before we move on?
I'm hoping to catch up with everything by the time season 5 releases this year.
Should be either late this year or early next year. I mean, and COVID has like kind of fucked everything, lah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mm,
okay, cool. At least I know I have some time, but definitely I want to see, especially like season 3 and season 4. If it's as good as you say, and going
mm.
into season 5, I definitely think I'll need to catch up on that.
Yeah, I mean, season two also has like some great moments. There's one episode where Samantha, who feels underappreciated by her daughters, as she is often is,
Mm-hmm.
fakes a death and plans a eulogy for herself, forcing her daughters to talk about her, pretending that she's dead, lah.
Yeah.
And it's actually one of the sweetest moments I've seen on television,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the few moments, like, as much as it's frustrating and exhausting, it's so exhausting raising children. It was one of those moments that makes it feel like, maybe it could be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been like a kid person. I've never like imagined myself being a teacher or raising children. It's not something I planned for my life. It's just like a life decision I made early on, lah.
Yeah.
But Better Things is one of those shows that kind of makes me feel like maybe like the exhaustion and the frustration might be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and Better Things paints that dynamic in an honest and raw portrait, of parenthood, and the complicated relationships between daughters and mothers at any age, and it does that wonderfully.
Uh-huh.
But there is a confidence to the filmmaking that takes it above and beyond your average TV show. Yep, that's my thoughts on Better Things. Let's move on to another FX series, as I mentioned. Let's talk about Baskets, which is I
Mm.
think easily the weirdest show on this particular episode.
Yep.
Baskets is created by Zach Galifianakis. It is beautiful and strange and really underappreciated. Zach Galifianakis plays two roles in this show, primarily as Chip Baskets, which is the main character. Baskets essentially is a sad, out of work, failed clown
Mm-hmm.
who goes to clown college in France, drops out, has to go back to his rural hometown of Bakersfield, California, and lower himself to the status of a rodeo clown.
Yep.
It is very unassuming and it is very, very well done. And I don't know how, because this is one of those shows where like I almost can't put my finger on it as
Yeah.
well as I can with the other shows, but it moves me emotionally. I think more than any of the other shows here.
Uh-huh.
What do you think about this eccentric little show, Baskets?
Oh man, I totally understand what you mean because
Hmm.
baskets makes you feel so many feels,
Yeah,
and it's almost like at a breakneck pace, if that makes sense, right?
hmm,
Like from moment to moment with what you're watching. Sometimes that emotion that it evokes or it elicits, right, from what you're watching,
yeah,
doesn't it quite have enough time to settle down
hmm,
or for you to make sense of it before something else gets thrown your way.
yeah,
And that is not to say that that is extremely fast paced or anything of the sort. But
hmm,
that's just the way that it plays out in terms of its pacing. Um,
mm,
to me, and this is something that I noticed as I was watching through. I've only done 2 seasons, so I can't talk about again. I can't talk about season 3 and season 4, unfortunately. Is
hmm,
that many things you watch on baskets are extremely frustrating
yeah,
to kind of like sit through, right? And very often those feelings of frustration don't get resolved in a way that is satisfactory for yourself as the audience member or for the characters. But
hmm,
that same discontent is a large part of the driving force of the characters, especially Chip in particular, and later on Dale, as we find out, as well as the plot, right? Like just kind of moving everything forward with that is a whole bunch of malcontent. And that is fascinating in the way that it's laid out over the two seasons that I've watched anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it is I don't know if it's because like that persistent feeling of like, oh, like the highs aren't as high as you want them to be, the lows are really, really low, and like you want resolution for that, so you stick around to see it. But it's very finely tuned, right? More so than I would imagine a franchise by Zach Galifianakis would be.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously of Between Two Ferns,
Mm-hmm.
Fame, and a whole bunch of other like comedic stuff that we've seen. But like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is that makes it so compelling. And I think that in and of itself is the unique feature of Baskets.
Mm-hmm.
There are moments in time that are just wrought with like it drips, the kind of emotional difficulty of trying to, for example, right, trying to r- resolve what your desires are versus other people's needs, your sense of filial piety towards your mom who's in a coma, and
Yeah.
essentially how she's treating you, which is a kind of like something that's revisited fairly often, which is a standout performance by
Louis
uh
Anderson.
yeah, Lou Anderson. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Just like it is, so the characters are extremely likable and unlikable at the same time, and very, very frustrating to watch, but they are also very real and very
Mm-hmm.
understandable and very human, and they ask for your empathy as a viewer, in a way that I think is not as intrusive as you imagine it to be, and that's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of the mystery about it, right? About
Mm-hmm.
Baskets, and this strange kind of little family dynamic, and the story that they're weaving.
Yeah, yeah, Chip is sometimes a sad clown. He's sometimes an angry clown, but very rarely is he a funny clown. Usually when he's not intending to be, like when he gets attacked by one of the bulls
Oh
at
yeah,
Bakersfield Rodeo, where he attempts to practice his art, that's only the times when he's funny, and this show by Jonathan Krzel and Zelt Galifianakis is very much a sad clown story, a weird little
Mhm.
show. Vibrating at a frequency that I think only a small subset of viewers are likely to kind of resonate or appreciate properly.
Yeah.
It presents sort of broad comedic concepts. It's there are things that you would think that are very slapstick or broad, like a cross-dressing Louis Anderson who plays Chip's mother Christine, or the evil twin concept. Zelt Galifianakis doubles his role as Chip, as well as this effeminate, insufferable older brother Dale, in a show that is so understated and melancholy in tone,
Hmm.
that it's easier to empathize with the rodeo customers baffled by
Yeah.
by Chip's sort of esoteric clown routine, inspired by his time at a French clowning academy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, these things, like for example Louis Anderson's performance as Christine, as you mentioned, is kind of never treated as a joke.
Nope.
you know
Nope.
and the show has only doubled down on the melancholy of it all, as it progresses. At times it feels like a series where Christine is the main character of the show.
Yeah.
And since the show is named after the family Baskets, it can work. It even emphasizes that, because sometimes it puts Chip on his back burner,
Yeah.
or on the show's back burner. Not that Chip's struggle to find his place in the world goes away, or doesn't have prominence. It's always prominent in there, lah. But his struggle and Christine's struggle and Dale's struggle all kind of go hand in hand with each other.
Yeah.
And remarkably, both of them kind of grow quite a bit the more you watch them. Chip has this hobo odyssey in season 2, that ends in tragedy. And Christine, through meeting her new love interest Ken, and
Yeah.
dealing with the death of her mother and all of that. It allows each character to grow season by season in a very natural way. um yeah, it is essentially a comedy about a bumbling clown who doesn't understand why no one likes him,
Hmm.
but he has very gradually and quickly and gracefully morphed into a drama about a woman getting a chance to truly live her life for the very first times
Yep.
in her 60s, and a man who's only starting to figure out life after wallowing on society's bottom rungs for a long time. And it's affecting because of that. The seasons all do very impressive and poignant work with
Mm,
the characters, with Christine, with Ken, with Chip. Maybe not so much with Dale, but the primary three of Vel.
yeah.
It's great. Are you at the point where Christine has met Ken yet?
Yes, I am.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm just slightly past that actually. So their relationship is growing.
nice.
But yeah.
Yeah,
But shout out.
Ken's such a nice guy, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it makes such it's such a strange dynamic. It is so
yeah,
strange. Like it's oddly sweet,
hmm,
in moments and very, very tender. But then you're reminded that Christine is absolutely can be a monster, right?
yeah,
And you're just like, oh God, can no.
yeah,
And you're so worried for him. Shout out to Martha Kelly who plays Martha Brooks as well. Like
yeah, yeah. I forgot about her.
she's a saint,
Yeah,
right? Like I mean, not the brightest bulb, but oh my God, she is a saint. I cannot believe the things that she puts up with. Very, very honestly, she should just walk away.
for Chip. Yeah, yeah. Oh
Yeah,
my
it
God.
is
Yeah.
absolutely just like nuts, right? And it's just like sometimes just plain disrespectful, the kind of like things that she has to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really feel for her, but like her presence there is, she's the only normal person
Yeah.
in the our outside of Ken Lai. She's the only normal person that we see frequently enough in the show to just kind of feel sad for and sorry for.
Yeah.
Because she's the only one that doesn't deserve anything that she gets.
Mm-hmm.
Coming to her. So like shout out to Martha Kelly for like an amazingly. I don't know how to characterize her performance exactly, but like man, I really feel for her.
Oh, 100%. Martha feels like the ultimate underappreciated ride or die, and she is like straight ride or die with Chip. Although she shouldn't be. Oh my God,
No, absolutely not.
it
That
makes
is
me sad. Like, but she is kind of the bedrock for Chip and what helps him grow eventually.
yeah.
So I guess that's kind of what he needs. But man, she really does deserve better. Poor Martha. Yeah, it's such a beautifully melancholy show, and it kind of gets more solemn and strange and sad and sympathetic and singular
Yeah.
with its richly poignant seasons as it goes on. It's clownish, but not in the way that you think it is. And it continues to provide laughter and pain in equal measure all the way right up to the end.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a great show, and one of those that also that I can't wait for you to finish as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, any concluding thoughts on baskets before we move on?
Yeah, definitely. I'm really keen. I'm too invested now to stop. But at the
Hmm.
same time, I feel like baskets was one of the things that took me a bit more time to get through because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's tough. It's emotionally draining sometimes, right? I think there were particular episodes where I just had to pause and I'm just like, okay, I need a break from this for like a day or something
Hmm,
before I
hmm.
continue because there's a lot to process, right? Just in terms of the amount of feelings that you have to deal with watching this, right?
Yeah.
All the characters in the show are very they're emotional and those emotions come across very, very strongly. And if you're any sort of like empathic kind of like personality, it is quite affecting
Hmm.
to be able to do that. So definitely I do plan to finish this. It is definitely a lot more difficult to watch than any of the other shows. I think like Dave is an easy watch for sure. Atlanta is
Yeah.
much easier, like
Hmm.
especially because it appeals to me on a aesthetic kind of intellectual level. Maybe is not as emotional as this or Better Things, and I think Better Things just because of its tone
Hmm.
and the normalcy that it
Hmm.
presents is widely different. So definitely gonna power through the rest of it, but
Hmm.
I know that it's gonna take me some time just to kind of like really, not lose interest and not get oversaturated by the work that Baskets is.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah, to kind of sort through.
definitely.
Hmm.
Watching baskets live, from season one, from its start in wow 2016 also. Oh my God, 2016 was like this is like the
A
year,
watershed year, yeah.
yeah, that FX like debuted all these like amazing dramedies. But anyways, much like Atlanta Baskets and Better Things, they kind of have like very irregular seasons. Sometimes they appear like 9 months after the season ends, and
Uh-huh.
sometimes it's like 3 years.
Yeah.
So they're like big gaps in between. And I think like that kind of helps almost with a
Right.
show like Baskets. You
Yeah.
get to kind of percolate with what has happened before you gear yourself up for a new, beautifully sad, weird season.
Hmm, hmm.
And kind of binging them. Binging shows like this actually it's not
I
advisable.
wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, take it from
Yeah,
me. It's just been it's been a while kind of ride the last like month or so. Uh,
Yeah.
especially with baskets and with better things, right? Like as
Yeah.
much as I want to, as in particular baskets, like I want to like see where is this gonna go and all of that. There are just days that I can't,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so strung, highly strung in that manner. Well, some of the episodes are at least, and it really does take a while. So if you are interested in watching baskets in particular, and maybe to a lesser and better things,
Mm-hmm.
pace yourself. Pace yourself. Unfortunately, I didn't really have the luxury of that
Mm-hmm.
while preparing for this. For preparing for this episode while we're talking about it.
Yeah.
But I would definitely recommend it. And with any kind of long-standing series that you watch, if you need to take time, please take the
Mm-hmm.
time to watch it. There's no rush.
Oh, 100%, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was it for baskets. Let's move on to our final topic and
Mhm.
the latest addition to this series of sterling dramedies that FX has produced comes to you from the mind of Dave Bird, aka Lil Dicky.
Yeah.
Lil Dicky straight up, you know, before the show came out, right? I think we all kind of know who Lil Dicky is because, you know, of
Yeah.
his incredible freestyles that have gone viral
Uh-huh.
on YouTube and whatnot. You know, he's on like all these various shows dropping like some of the most layered rhymes I've ever seen
Yeah.
or heard, you know. And when I heard that he was, you know, making a dramedy TV show, you know, trying to follow in the vein of a Childish Gambino, I kind of wondered whether he was uh, stretching himself beyond his niche,
Mm-hmm.
beyond what he can do, you
Yeah.
know. And at first, that really came to be like when I first started watching Dave. I thought it was like an okay show. Like
Yeah.
it never crossed into bad or average. You know,
Yeah.
it was a good show that had a lot of like bro humor, a lot of toilet humor, a lot of dick jokes. You know, as his name obviously implies. You know,
Yeah.
and I kind of like dismissed it after 4 or 5 episodes. I was like, yeah, this is a solid show, but it's never gonna kind of rank up there with the best of the best. You know,
Yeah.
but as the show keeps going on, as the show keeps digging deeper into Dave and deconstructing his neurosis,
Mm-hmm.
his selfishness,
Mm-hmm.
his delusions of grandeur, that's when the show becomes on a level of an Atlanta or the Better Things or Baskets, you know.
Yeah.
And that's how self-aware Dave is, you know, in making his own personality so unlikable or dislikable.
Yeah.
And it's really good. And the first episode that really brought to mind that the show can be more than just a series of like dick jokes is episode 5 or 6 in season 1, which featured Gaeta's bipolar disorder.
Oh, Hype Man. Hype Man.
Hype
Episode
Man, yeah,
five. Yeah.
that was the first episode. I was like, okay, the show has more to say,
Yep. Yep.
and
Yep.
it's doing so very very well. Did you have kind of the same trajectory or feeling as I did going
Yes.
into Div?
Pretty
Yeah.
much. Pretty much. I mean, like, again, fairly familiar with like Little Dicky and his musical career, so to
Mm-hmm.
say, like over the years and all of that. I think we've watched a number of his videos when he first came out, and it kind of made a splash and all of that. So I thought it was part the first couple of episodes, just like you, was kind of par for the course, right?
Mm-hmm.
But man, like once we get into to kind of Gata's story and the bipolar disorder and the way that's framed and understood and
Mm-hmm.
portrayed, I was just like, okay, now I need to pay attention. Like this is the point in time where this is getting serious. And if I
Mm-hmm.
don't pay attention, I'm not doing myself or the series justice. And yeah, Hype Man was definitely that, right? Like I think I can point to the exact moment in which that happened for me, and it's when he's asleep on the couch while we're at rehearsal. And the
Yeah. Yeah.
entire conversation that unfolds after that, I'm just like, okay, there's something special here. If they
Yeah.
can keep this up, this is going to be phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And well, what do you know? it
Yeah.
just goes from strength to strength from there. I mean, I don't think Dave is as evenly distributed in terms of its magical moments as the other three series that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There are some pacing issues here and there and all of that, and it is buffered a great deal by so many slapstick, dick joke, toilet humor things that there are moments in time where it's kind of a turn off
Mm-hmm.
because it aspires to more, and
Mm.
oftentimes it does hit that, but not always. So it's
Yeah.
it's sometimes frustrating to kind of watch in that kind of manner, right? Like there are
Mm.
moments that are like, oh, that was so good, and then the next moment you have having diarrhea on a hike, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, some of
Yeah.
those other
Very
things.
very very big, like on scatological, almost like like those early 2000s kind of MTV kind of shows humor.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, there's obviously a very kind of big, like, throwback to that kind of humor and content,
yeah.
generally speaking. But like Dave is surprising in so many ways, right? If
Mm-hmm.
nothing else, just yeah, it Dave is very much like Little Dicky's music, right?
Yeah.
It is parody and slapstick and funny and nonsensical on its surface level. But
Mm-hmm.
if you take the time, right,
Yeah.
there are layers within layers within layers that you can uncover from the
Mm.
story that he's trying to tell here. And I think
Mm.
that's brilliant. It's not as polished as Atlanta, right?
No,
Like it
not yet.
doesn't have that kind of like aesthetic vision or that philosophical bent of exploring the experimental side of the medium.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't need to, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
enjoyable for its own sake in many respects. But just like these really, really special moments that stand out and you're just like, okay, like there's something here that that's worth shouting out about.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like the Gator episode in particular was such a smart and empathetic
Yep.
and poignant moment that it kind of elevates itself above that lah. And as the show continues, especially later on towards season one, particularly with there are some like jokes that really really hit. Like the wood
Wooden
shirts.
shirt?
Wooden shirts, like it's
Yeah.
it's it's on a level of like the invisible car for me. Like whenever I
Yeah.
think about it, I laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
like it is really dope. I won a wood shirt.
yeah, it's so insane. Sauron is my favorite character on the show.
Yeah,
It's unfortunate that these like precocious, absolutely confident kid,
yeah.
right, is just walking around with like a stack of G's and just like
Mhm.
owning all the adults within his space, and I think that's kind of brilliant. Yeah, that to me is definitely a standout moment in as far as the
Yeah.
comedy goes.
Yeah,
Um,
and not to say like the first half of the season was like weak by any means. There are a
no, no,
couple
no.
episodes that are strong. I think in particular episode three was the first time I really laughed out loud in the show. When Ellie is trying to get Dave or Leo Dicky
Yeah,
to be more sexually adventurous.
yeah, yeah,
And like there's a gag at the end of the episode involving like the garage door and
yeah.
their housemate walking in. It does make me laugh very hard lah.
It is so
Uh,
good.
and his whole neurosis is hilarious, and the trajectory of his relationship with Ellie actually I think is like the defining emotional arc for Dave,
For sure.
particularly with episode 9, when Dave accompanies Ellie to her sister's wedding at Napa Valley lah.
Yep.
And kind of Dave kind of fails to be mentally or emotionally present for Ellie when he's distracted by a potential career move,
hmm
and uh, Dave eventually accuses Ellie of having no ambition, which kind of leads to their breakup right at
Yep.
the end of the season. I mean, there were a couple of moments in that episode, particularly the fight, particularly with the callback to them doing the autotune, the back and forth in the beginning and stuff like that,
Yep.
which continues to be called back to in season two, by the way. It's very well done.
hmm
And then you get into the finale of season one
Oh.
when Dave is trying to put out this like very long offensive track about prison as his first single. It's like this 10-minute thing, and like the
Yeah.
first 6 minutes, which are played uninterrupted. Which made me think like the whole episode was going to be a music video, right?
Yeah.
But it plays this whole thing. I'm like, where the hell is this going? It's kind of funny, it's kind of clever, but where the hell is this going?
Yeah.
And then the point of that was that a lot of people turned off the track, especially the executives,
Yep.
before Dave got to his point,
hmm
which kind of that track represents in a meta way the season of Dave.
Yeah.
Like if you just have a little bit of patience to get through this, you kind of get to the point at the end,
Uh,
and it is kind of worth it. Like the breaking down of Dave's narcissism and delusions of grandeur was the point of Dave, lah. But to get to that, you have to sit through Dave being narcissistic.
hmm
And that song was kind of a metaphor for this. And I thought that was so brilliant the way that he was able to lay that level of meta upon already a meta show about his life. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
yeah.
For sure.
What do you think about that track at the end and the finale and how season one ended?
I think okay, if anything, the season one finale, right, was some of the most like boundary pushing as far as
Yeah.
like Dave goes, right? It was definitely the most boundary pushing. It caught me off guard. I was completely surprised by that. Right? Sure,
Mhm.
they gave us, talk about mental illness and like kind of managing that within this very strange kind of like singular experience of being a rap artist, right? And aspiring to that kind of greatness that's there and the whole industry that surrounds that.
Mhm.
But like the storytelling in jail and the
Yeah.
way that plays out is like that's Atlanta level stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? In my opinion, and then I was like, okay, that made me super excited to go in for season two. I think like
Mhm.
if it didn't end on that kind of note, especially with just kind of like I am very very invested in Dave and Ellie working out,
Yeah.
and with the breakout, I was just like, oh fuck you, Dave, seriously,
Mm.
but like with the way that the finale ended, right? It was just like, okay, I'm halfway through what the entire franchise has out at the moment. This is great motivation. If they can give me more of that in season two, I'm down. I'm totally down with that.
Have you seen any of season two?
I am. Let me see. I think the last one that I finished was the one after Kareem.
Mm.
The Bar Mitzvah one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I do have to say that season two, episode one, International Gander in Korea,
yeah,
is I think like the height of like farcical comedy that Dave has ever done,
yeah,
because it just keeps getting messier and messier.
yeah,
It was like season two, episode one of Fleabag, where you just kind of want to turn away and like you want to watch. It was so uncomfortable,
yeah,
but so funny as well. Dave is in Korea. Obviously, he's trying to make a music video of CL. He was a presenter at a Korean award show, and then he just keeps like sticking his foot in his mouth like more and more.
yeah. And Kata is not helping at
Kata
all.
is not helping. The intern that they brought over from America gets called up for national service in the middle of it, and he didn't know. We find out that Dave doesn't have an album, and he's been pretending to be writing, and he
Yeah,
just has like this case of writer's block. There's this whole international incident. He offends CL with his cultural appropriation, and
yeah.
and all of that is just so insane, and when there's some episodes here, especially in the first half of the season, that gets to that heights of like surreality.
Yeah.
Like for example, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar episode was so bizarre,
Yeah.
and just the way that he just like Kareem lets Dave put he just like gives him rope for Dave to tie himself with,
Yeah.
and the more Dave keeps talking about how he's not culturally appropriating, like
Hmm.
the more he is, and the more he obviously is, right?
Yeah.
And then like it leads to like this insane compound fracture that they show with Kareem being stuck in a toilet. It was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen, but it's very Dave lah.
Yeah.
That Kareem episode was like the most Dave I've ever seen,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and then but it also shows like with season two, like the more success that Dave has, the worse he becomes, with his neurosis,
Hmm.
with his selfishness, the more he alienates his friends, Els especially, who's
Oh
just like
yeah.
done with him lah. I think Bar Mitzvah at least like they kind of like reconnect there,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
else is just like like fuck this guy lah.
Yeah. Totally
Yeah.
understandable, right? Like honestly, yeah. Again, right? A toxic friendship with everything that's kind of going on. Bar
Yeah.
mitzvah was touching. I can see some healing going on there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But still, like, oh man, Dave is such an asshole.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but still. While we're talking about Els, actually, I just want to talk a bit about Els and Emma's relationship, which is one of the more heartfelt,
Mm.
normal, understandable relationships and characters within
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 the
the
show, yeah.
show. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoy just like the little moments that they kind of get with their banter and then the to and fro, or
Mm-hmm.
the little dance that they have with the wood t-shirt and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that dynamic within the absurdity of everything else that surrounds Dave.
Mm.
Yeah, that's like it's a little kind of safe haven for like normal things and understandable human things that aren't like drowned out by this man's like combination of neuroticism and ego at the same time,
Mm.
and it's refreshing every once in a while to visit that,
Yeah.
amidst all the craziness that's going on.
Yeah. Donald Glover has said a lot that Atlanta was inspired by two particular shows. Donald Glover has credited The Sopranos and
Hmm.
Twin Peaks as his major inspirations for Atlanta.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see that like, on the mood board of Atlanta, right? I see the Sopranos-ish and I see the Twin Peaks-ish of Atlanta.
Yep.
With Dave, though Dickey credits Curb Your Enthusiasm as
Yep.
his main like inspiration, and the cringiness of Dave really mirrors Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh
I mean,
yeah, for sure.
especially in particular with the whole narcissistic Jewish genius
Yeah.
man child
Hmm.
aspect of
Hmm.
it. Yeah, it's very good. The second half of the season, stuff that you have to look forward to. I mean, the next episode that you're gonna watch is Dave matching with Doha Cat on a dating app.
Oh yeah, I saw like
Uh,
a couple of minutes of that.
yeah, the whole show is told. The whole episode is told via text, and it's quite inventive visually.
Yeah.
There's a subsequent episode called Ad Man, which flashes back to Dave back during his ad agency days. He was
Uh-huh.
in an ad agency with Emma back in the early 2000s, and it really goes to show the growth of his narcissism.
Hmm.
And that is the point where Emma is sort of like done with him.
Yeah.
The most recent episode enlightened Dave. Episode 9 is the most, I think, experimental, which was this week, lah, which is the most kind of experimental
Yeah.
Dave has ever been. Dave is dropped by his label. You kind of see it coming because he doesn't have an album, right?
Hmm.
So he goes to Rick Rubin's house to get Rick Rubin to help produce him. But Rick Rubin has this like very weird, very zen kind of way of deconstructing Dave. He kind of mind fucks Dave to kind of strip Dave's ego.
Yeah.
And the majority of the episode is told inside Dave's mind, very like Charlie Kaufman esque.
Uh-huh.
And it kind of leads at the end to a sort of a physical battle and a rap battle between Dave and his ego
Oh.
inside his brain, which is very, very good. And it really exposes strips away and deconstructs all his narcissism, his delusions of grandeur, why he resorts to scatological humor and toilet humor so often
Hmm.
as a
Hmm.
defense mechanism, because he is so insecure, right?
Yeah.
That was one of the best episodes that Dave has done, and much in the trajectory of season one. As you get towards the end of season two, you start to see the artistry like go full swing once again, and
Yeah.
that's what I really love about Dave, and that's why I think like season two is starting to like get up to the level of the other three shows
Uh-huh.
that we're
Uh-huh.
talking about. Yeah, but I mean Dave isn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
But like I see like there are moments in Dave where it does reach those heights,
Uh-huh.
and as soon as it kind of clicks and it does that consistently, then it belongs up there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious. I'm really, really curious. Um if it can reach those heights, and
Yeah.
how it will reach those heights, because Dave is unique, right? Of the four things that we've talked about today, all of them are very different in their own way,
Mhm.
and Dave is unique, and I'm really interested to see where it goes. As far as you know, how some of our favorite dramedies are done, right? If we're talking about Fleabag, we're talking about Barry or Atlanta and all of that, like they're all very distinct kind of creatures.
Mhm.
And it's always fascinating to see how they go about achieving this level of storytelling that endears us to it. And like Dave is getting there.
Mhm.
Um, but we'll see. We'll see. I have a feeling it's gonna take maybe a season three to kind of like coalesce that
Mm.
um their place within that strata of storytelling, but we'll see. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. But yeah, it does have like those moments of genius, and I think like once it clicks, it will definitely be very good. And towards the end of season two, it really clicks. I think like the last 3 to 4 episodes of
Uh-huh.
season two that I've seen are phenomenal. They're Atlanta level. It's just a matter of like making 10 straight episodes of that, and then it can be considered like a genius level show.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good show. It's a very good show,
Hmm.
regardless of that. Yeah. So those are 4 FX dramedies that we wanted to highlight here.
Yep.
And the best news is that like Singapore doesn't actually Singapore does have FX if you have cable.
Yeah.
But the thing is like with the cable shows they kind of come like a year or two late.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm sure you're familiar with the cable schedule, but thanks to Disney Plus
Oh
Singapore,
yeah.
you're able to stream Atlanta, Better Things, Baskets, and Dave easily at a simple click.
Yep.
Because if you didn't know, Disney owns everything. Disney, a couple of years ago, we talked about this on Genre Equality.
Yeah.
Disney bought Fox, which owns FX. FX puts all their shows on Hulu,
Hmm.
which coincidentally Disney also bought. So because the FX streaming service and Hulu streaming service are not available in Singapore, they figured, let's just put the shows on Disney Plus.
Yep.
And if you go to the Star section of Disney Plus, that's where you will find Atlanta, Better Things, Baskets, and Dave, and a whole lot of other great FX
Oh
shows
yeah.
as well. If you're not caught up with stuff like the Shield or the Americans, the FX actually have good solid list of prestige dramas that ranks up there with The Sopranos or The Wire and
Yeah.
Mad Men and things
Yeah.
like that.
For sure.
Particularly the Americans, which is one of my favorite shows of all time.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the four shows we're talking about this week. We will be back in a couple of weeks to talk about the malleability of the Western genre. I will be comparing and contrasting one particular movie, which is Tombstone, which stars Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer.
Uh-huh.
Because I feel like Tombstone represents the peak of revisionist, classic macho style of westerns.
Yeah.
The whole like almost unrealism superhero aspect of westerns.
Hmm.
The original superheroes of American storytelling were Western heroes, and I thought like Tombstone is the peak of that. And I'm going to compare and contrast that with other westerns that subvert that genre, particularly Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven.
Yeah.
If Tombstone was revisionist, Unforgiven is almost cruel in its realism and its harshness. Versace totally flips on the idea of the heroic cowboy fighting the evil Native Americans
Hmm.
by portraying the hero cowboy as the villain. Well, not at first as the villain. It
Yeah.
presents it as the hero at first, and then like as his obsession and his hatred and his racism comes to a fore, you start not liking him. And it's such a, especially for a movie in the 50s. It
Hmm.
was, I think, like pretty revolutionary. And as well, as I mentioned, westerns were the initial Pulp Fiction, the first comic books, the first superheroes of American storytelling, and no figure looms as large as the bandit Jesse James in
Mm.
terms of the original celebrity culture of Americans. And the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, starring Brad Pitt and Casey Affleck, deconstructs celebrity culture in the context of westerns. And I think that's like so interesting, and yeah, and that's why I wanted to talk about westerns in our next episode. And of course, genre equality will be back at the beginning of next month. We're going to be talking about a lot of big titles, in
Mm.
particular. Man, I kind of forgot what's the big one coming. Oh, Rick and Morty, of course.
Yeah. So we're talking about Rick and Morty. We're going to talk about the Suicide Squad. That's been getting a lot of hype.
Yeah,
We will also be talking about what else? Well, covering new season of Legends of Tomorrow, new season of
yeah.
Tucker and Birdie, um,
Uh,
the Free
Free
Guy.
Guy is the new Ryan Reynolds movie that's out in cinemas right now.
Yeah.
A lot of big kind of blockbusterish. I suppose I can't say blockbuster since they aren't breaking the box office.
Hmm.
Particularly because COVID and all. But yeah, Free Guy and Jungle Cruise and stuff like that are out there. I saw it's gonna be talking about the latest anime season, as
Yeah.
well as The Witcher: Nightmare of the Wolf,
Which
which
I'm very
is
excited about. Hmm.
an anime one shot OVA. I don't know what to call it. Based in the Witcher universe.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it would be an OVA. I'm not too sure. I mean, obviously they're not following your standard anime
Hmm.
conventions here. But
Yeah.
yeah, highly looking forward to that. Trailer looks dope. I think it's out in like 2 weeks or so, so I'll be watching that as well
Hmm.
as the whole slate of what we've gotten for this new anime season.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will dive into all of that.
Yeah, I hear that this season isn't as stacked as last season.
Yeah, I think it's a comparative problem, right? Like there
Mm,
are some good ones here and there, but just like you can't beat like 18 good, anime and like four amazing anime in one particular season. And then
yeah.
you only get like drips and drabs here and there, which are highly
Mm,
inconsistent and nowhere near the level of your like To Your Eternity and all of that.
mm-hmm.
It's a little disappointing, but I mean, like it's life. That's the way it kind of rolls. Like every once in a while, something special will pop up. But I
Yeah.
I do feel spoiled by the spring season.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah. So well, we'll see how it goes. Some of them are getting interesting going into like fifth episode or so, so it's not too bad.
Okay.
But we'll dive into that when we get to it.
Oh, definitely. And in the meantime, once again, give us a like, follow, and subscribe on
Yeah.
YouTube. You can also find us if YouTube's not your thing. You can find us on Mixcloud, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all the various other things.
Hmm. Hmm.
We're finally back up there, and do check out Asian Nightmares by Christopher Falk.
Yeah.
Episode 1, The Water Corridor, is up now.
Yeah, look forward to more original content coming your way, guys.
Mhm.
We're just expanding what we're trying to do, right? Like we started out as a podcast just talking about genre stuff, and now we are expanding into a channel that also does genre stuff.
Mm,
So you can look out for that.
definitely. Till next time. This has been Hit Zero.
I'm Isa.
Goodbye, guys.
Ciao.